Welcome to the Mind Money Spectrum podcast, where your hosts, Aaron Agti and Trishul Patel, go beyond traditional finance questions to help you explore how to use your money to achieve the freedom you want in life.
In this episode, Trishul and Aaron explore the benefits of financial independence, unrelated to retiring early. Some people no longer work for money. Some maintain their status quo, and others enjoy increased security and control. Even so, all these perks do not necessarily require financial independence. And there's no need to wait until retirement either to shift your mindset. So perhaps the benefit of working with a financial advisor is to turn the fear of future unknowns into the comfort gained from knowing you are on track to live your best life. And now, on to our conversation.
Hi, my name is Aaron Agti. I'm a financial advisor in the Bay Area, and I'm here with Trishul Patel, a wealth manager on the East Coast.
Hey Aaron, great to be here today, and thanks everybody for listening.
Great to be here as well. So in our first episode, we talked about FIRE, financial independence, retire early. But one of the observations I've made over the last year is that the idea of financial independence is not necessarily tied to retiring early. This has come up with a few conversations with clients who I've helped go through their IPO. So they've been employees of tech companies, they've benefited from an IPO. And while some are financially independent now, some are kind of on track based on vesting schedules and other savings goals. They've all managed to keep their expenses in line with the lifestyle they want. And so financial independence is very much on the horizon. But most of them have not expressed a desire to stop working. Again, there's some vesting schedule issues, but it was the conversations of just because they're financially independent didn't mean they wanted to stop working. They didn't necessarily have plans on increasing expenses. They probably were going to maintain their lifestyle. And today, Trish and I want to talk about this idea that the financial independence is separate from the retire early idea. And we'll kind of explain what are some of the benefits of financial independence that don't necessarily come from kind of freeing up your time and choosing not to work. And I might even kind of ask Trishul that if he had already achieved FIRE, why did he decide to start a new business? Kind of things like this. So Trishul, when you first think about FIRE, maybe as applied to yourself in the past, or maybe as you think about it now, if you were thinking about the difference between the FI part and the RE part, what do you think is one of the big distinctions?
I think the biggest distinction I can think of is not necessarily the stop working component, but there's a caveat there. I think if you add two more words into that phrase, you probably get a clearer picture of what we're getting at. It's the notion that you stop working for money. So you could keep working, but you're not doing it for the money. You're doing it because it provides you some other benefit. And that's what I think about in terms of financial independence and how it relates to retirement. So there's a perspective that you could be financial independent and be working, and you could be financial independent and not working. But the notion is the working part is optional, and the actual work that you do is also optional, meaning you have choices in which path you take. And it's fair to say that if you're not financially independent, you may likely choose a different path of work than you would if you are. And that different path is probably linked back to money.
That's an interesting way to phrase it. You could stop working for money, but if you kind of enjoy the work that you do, and so I think there's like we've talked about well-being in the past, and like that sense that of fulfillment you can get from your contributions to a workforce, or the kind of problems you take on and achieve and accomplish those and overcome challenges. And there's definitely value there. And so I guess it doesn't surprise me when they say that they have no plans to stop working. They enjoy their work, and they they uh they almost can't envision their life without working right now. Like they don't know how they would spend their time. So I think there's a few things that I think about. One, work is part of well-being. Two is like there's a difference between I'm leaving my job because I want to get out of the job versus I know what I'm going to. I know how I'm going to spend my time, and I want to do all these things, but I don't have enough time to do those things because I'm working now. So I'm going to leave my work and go do something else, versus just kind of maintain the status quo where there's no vision for how they would spend their time if they left work. So I think there's a few components there. And it's yeah, I try like the idea of working not for money does change the kind of the way they approach the idea of working.
I think so. And the way I also kind of see it is the idealist in me wants to say that in some sort of futuristic society, maybe we can all just work not for money and do what we think is the best for our own lives. We're working for our lives, for what we feel might be the best for us. That's not necessarily tied to a strong monetary component, and the money just comes, somehow. That might be a good way to structure things. But that's not where we are now, and there are certain choices that we need to make, and it may be often the case that the choices that we make when we have stronger monetary constraints to deal with are likely not entirely in line with how we want to live our best lives. And given that, then I can understand there's a trade-off there that people make, today. But again, the idealist wants to believe that maybe it is better for everybody in the long run that we all work just for our, what we want to do in terms of how we spend our time, and maybe the money will come. Now, again, that's a bit of an idealist scenario. So I think, it's quite likely that most of us have made this sort of distinction where, okay, we're doing this not necessarily because we really want to, but it may get us to where we really want to be, either in terms of our career or just in terms of having this financial control over our lives so that we can make other less monetarily driven choices. And what also kind of goes through my mind is having this type of conversations with oneself is perfectly sensible to have, to realize that, yes, I'm doing this to become financially independent so that I can go off and sell t-shirts.
Yeah. So I guess one of the things that I think is important for explaining how I think of it, because again, I'm going to come from the financial planner perspective. There's definitely the emotional psychological benefits and that side of it, but from a just the pure math perspective, if a client tells me, oh, I'm going to keep working anyways, and I'll keep saving in my 401k, so I'm going to keep my expenses more or less the same. I might spend a little bit more, but more or less similar lifestyle. Like I'm happy with my lifestyle now. I just want to maintain this, and I have all this other money from an IPO. Then it almost it changes the math in a way that the clients maybe don't quite realize. But it's something like I remember the classic one is for people who are in their late 50s, early 60s, and they want to retire, and you do a projection for them and say, okay, your money can last this long, but then they take on like a side job and they take on a consulting gig, and so they end up working a little bit, and the income from that means they're withdrawing less from a portfolio, and so 5 years later everything looks so much better, and it's kind of, you can look back and say, well, if you had told me when you wanted to retire that you were going to work this consulting gig, you could have spent more money over the last 5 years. And I think about that. It's like, well, if you're going to keep saving into your 401k for someone who's even younger, and you're going to keep working and keep maintaining a lifestyle because you already go on the vacations you want in the kind of, by definition, limited vacation time you have because you are working, then you have so many other options and choices in front of you. You could increase your expenses that you've been keeping relatively low. Sometimes actually kind of, you can take on extra risk with your company stock from that IPO. That kind of, if you're planning on working 10 more years anyways, then yes, it allows you to be more aggressive and maybe even hope for a significant change in wealth over that time frame, as opposed to kind of maintaining current lifestyle. Maybe you could try to see, could you get your net worth upwards of multiple millions of dollars, and that could be enough to change your life in a way that I feel bad saying this, but kind of $1 million may not change your lifestyle if your income is already $200,000. Like $1 million kind of applying a withdrawal rate could generate 30 to 40,000 a year. So like that extra 30 to 40,000 a year doesn't quite change your lifestyle per se. But it's something like, if you know you're going to be working anyways, you have some other opportunity in front of you that you're not considering. You don't need to maintain the status quo. It doesn't have to be stopping working, but looking to improve your happiness or well-being in some other way.
Yeah, I think the theme that we're kind of seeing is really, it doesn't have too much to do with the notion of stopping working, for money.
Mm-hmm.
It really has to do with providing a sense of security. It seems like it's a metaphorical safety net on our well-being. And I don't have the paper in front of me, but I remember reading something not too long ago that said a strong component of well-being is just how secure do we feel about our position in life. Are things rocky and shaky? And, what happens if we lose our job or something happens to, our home or our health or something like that? These are all big things that kind of weigh us down. But understanding that one is financially independent and it's okay, if the company goes under, or if we don't get that bonus, or if we have to take a few months off for sabbatical, something like that. It's okay. Having that sense of security of knowing those options are there, of knowing these alternatives are there, can make a difference on an individual's well-being today, even if they choose to keep working. And, another way to say what you related to on the planning side is there's this notion of coast fire. So it's another flavor in the fire community. and this flavor, it deals with the notion that there are individuals who, if they've saved a lot early on, then they could be in their 30s, and even if they save $0 more into their retirement funds, they'll still have enough to retire when they turn 65. So the notion is these individuals don't need to put any more money towards retirement because they front loaded their savings. And the notion there is they may not be financially independent today, but it's in the mail. And that can come with its own feelings of freedom and reassurance and security, that we just kind of talked about. And the idea there is, okay, so you still may have to keep working, but you're working for a different reason. You're not working for your retirement. That's kind of covered. You've already done that heavy lifting. All the money that you earn is just to support yourself, and the rest is gravy, right? It doesn't have to go towards a longer term purpose. It can go towards your happiness today. So that might be another way to think about financial independence, where again, you're not necessarily able to stop working, and you might still be working for money, but it does change the conversation a little bit. You still may have that security of knowing that your long-term future is kind of covered, and that could provide its own benefits.
I think that's a great way to phrase it. And I do kind of focus on that word security. When I think of the individuals who are either already financially independent or expressed or are like very near on track for financial independence, usually just they have to work a couple more years for everything to vest, then they might be there. They always kind of the households on my mind. They want to keep working. They enjoy their work. There's nothing particularly stressful about it or upsetting, but they do want a kind of sense of agency or control over their own lives. And it's, I think it was almost all entirely like either psychological, emotional, where if they talk about those risks, if they're out of work for a period of time, like, well, when we have enough cash reserve, you could easily pay your bills and your skills are in demand enough that you could likely find a job, even if you took a year off. So like we could afford a year sabbatical and then you can go back to work. Or they worry about kind of those catastrophic things, whether it is a disability or loss of loved one, or even something changes in the house situation. Like, well, no, I made sure you had disability insurance. We have enough life insurance. We have enough kind of in reserves in between homeowners insurance or renters insurance and your reserves. We can cover all those emergencies. And so they're almost like trying to figure out what these like worst case scenarios are. The thing about these unknown unknowns kind of thing, where I don't know what could happen in the future, so I want to be as prepared as possible. And if I can be financially independent, then that means I don't have to worry about the earning money side. And I do get that sense of just, again, control over their own lives. They're not dependent on an employer. And I wonder if it's actually similar to the happiness research, where happiness correlates with income up to about $75,000 per year for the household, where the idea is once you're earning enough that you are confident that you can pay all the bills, you can afford to kind of buy food, you don't have to worry about where the money comes from next month and be able to pay everything, then the happiness tends to level off. But I wonder if that kind of theory might apply to that kind of longer term financial independence level, where it's no longer income per se, but now it's a net worth or investable net worth, where you get rid of those feelings of concern. You start to kind of like, what's the worst thing that could happen and I'm still fine, and I'm getting kind of not dependent on the employer, which feels outside your control, but now your own life is within your control. I want to I almost guess there's some kind of correlate there, where happiness may not increase after income of $75,000, but there might be something else once you get to a level where your net worth can generate an income of $75,000.
Yeah, I think it comes back to that key word that you placed in your response, control. And it does mean a big deal. There's another study where I do have the link to that I'll put in the show notes. And here that they looked at the impact of control somebody having this sense of control in their life and how that impacted them 20 years later. So it's a longitudinal study. And what they noticed is that they looked at a representative sample of adults. In this case, they were looking in the 90s and then following up in, the 2010s. And they were looking for this notion of, did a sense of control have a long-term benefit? And what they noticed is individuals who perceived a higher sense of control in their lives, when they were younger, they ended up being more physically active and had higher executive functioning 20 years later. So this is nowhere near this might just be a correlation, and there's certainly more that could be looked into. But the high level notion is having this sense of agency, as you mentioned, it can have potentially longer term impacts on how you think and feel and behave, a decade, 2 decades later, in this case.
This is more anecdotal, but I have seen it enough that I now kind of recommend to clients that if they're financially independent, or at least really close, and they are still planning on working, I talk about the idea of kind of look for opportunities of like psychological leverage. And I use that phrase because anytime you have a negotiation, usually between employer and employee, there's some kind of the leverage idea helps you get what you want. But for my clients, because I have their best interests in mind, I kind of tell them, no, you get to decide, you know what, I'm not going to work on that project. It doesn't seem interesting. Or I'm only going to work 4 days a week. And, or kind of, you get to think about all of the things you want in your life that your employer needs to accommodate if you're going to work for them. And sometimes it's kind of, this is mostly pre-COVID, but I'm going to work from home more often. I'm only going to the office 1 or 2 days a week. And so there's probably some component of work where you overall and in general, you like the work you do, you like the team that you're working on, you like the people you work with, but there's some way to improve it. This could be that kind of giving you the confidence to ask for it and almost kind of give you the confidence to almost demand it, where if they're not going to provide that, or if they kind of like, no, what are you doing? We're going to go find someone else to do this role. You don't need their salary. If they want your skills, they need to make your life better, not just pay you a salary. And most of the time, they have gotten what they wanted. That most employers like, oh no, we love your skills, we love the work you do, you're so valuable. We'll do what we can to accommodate you. And in one particular case, it didn't work, and so he retired. He left the company. But there were that wasn't the only issue, but that was knowing that he was financially independent helped him kind of know that he wasn't bluffing, kind of thing. And it's not just that kind of that control of, yes, if the worst thing happened, I'll still be fine, but actually taking advantage of that control, like implementing that control over your own life, showing that you have control of your time, not your employer. And so I'm curious if you have either seen with clients or even yourself other situations where you kind of felt more confident or saw that a client was more confident because they're financially independent.
Yeah, it certainly does come up, and it's a different feeling, frankly, knowing that you're able to make these types of choices. And it's also a different feeling knowing that you will be able to make these types of choices, based on the current path you're on. That also adds a sense of security on its own. So I think having the data and the understanding of where you are and where you're going to be in itself, it can be helpful and important. So I think, there are a handful of reasons why people may continue to work after they stop working for money. And, the high level ones are, of course, you actually like your current job. But Aaron, you made a great point. At that point, it still means that you might have the opportunity to kind of flip the narrative a bit, meaning you get to define the parameters around how that work is done. Often it's just, less hours, right? Go part-time.
Mm-hmm.
But there are also some other benefits, right? You might be able to keep the benefits, at your current job, which you may not be able to get on your own. But, if you're able to do this part-time with your own parameters, again, you're still working for money a little bit, or working for benefits, but still you're getting probably more in terms of life goals than you would be otherwise. And,
Yeah.
a lot of people, what I might also say is a lot of people find purpose through their jobs, and that's not a horrible thing. It's definitely a good reason to keep yourself motivated and active. And there are a lot of health benefits of being in the workforce. So those are still reasons to kind of keep working. It's not necessarily a bad thing. And then, the two other things that also came up were the fact that maybe you want to explore a different career, or maybe you want to be a little more entrepreneurial with what you're doing. That side job could come into play as that full-time job. So a lot of these opportunities are there while you're still, working. It's just not for money.
Yeah, I so when I think about my own life, actually, uh, I I feel like that it's really hard to internalize it, but you you could, like you said, the idea of knowing you're on track provides so much of that, where you don't have to actually be financially independent to have the confidence to make some of those requests. And when I think of my own life, I worked at a financial planning firm for a decade, and I thought I was on track to be a partner there, and I was kind of ready to look at everything necessary to grow a financial advisory business. And the negotiations did not go as I expected. And so even though I'm not financially independent, and a big part is that because my wife does work in tech, and um, she's able to not fully support the household, but do a lot of the heavy lifting. Kind of, we had worked out that I didn't need to stay at my former firm to achieve the lifestyle we wanted. That while it might be a little more financially risky, I could start my own firm. But 3 years ago, I was planning on staying at that firm and still using that to kind of achieve the lifestyle I wanted. So like it still had all of the self-confidence, the I don't want to say I had leverage per se, but I was self-aware enough of my situation and what that future could be that I didn't need to be financially independent. I think that's kind of what I'm trying to get to in sort of conclusions, that that sense of control that you mentioned that in that longitudinal study provides those health benefits doesn't necessarily have to come from being financially independent. But more observationally, that's where it does come from. And I don't know if it's a societal level issue. I don't know if it's a kind of how a person is wired. Like just being, like you said, being entrepreneurial requires a lot of risks, and not everyone may be willing to take on those risks. Like they're big lifestyle risks. So maybe there's a difference there. But I think that everyone is looking for that kind of, that again, that sense of control, and for that sense of agency, the control over their own lives. And being financially independent is one of those ways to achieve that, but it doesn't have to be the only way.
Yeah, hey, good points, Aaron.
I guess it has there. Can you think back in your own life of was there a time where you felt like you weren't? Was there a time that you felt you took control of your own life?
You know, for me, it was frankly, when I shifted out of my highly career focused position towards being an entrepreneur and starting my own business. I would definitely say that was a big difference. And for me, I did it at the point where I realized that I could support myself passively based upon the income that I had. I had achieved that notion of financial independence. And it has been different. You know, I would say that even as I was working, I did my job very, very well, you know, as an individual, as an employee. I, you know, did everything I was supposed to do. I managed teams, I grew businesses, I raised revenue, and so on. And the transition to this type of work, where now I'm a business owner, it's interesting because I may work just as much. You know, I don't mind working whenever I have some enough time to actually work. But the difference is I look forward to Mondays now. Like I don't mind having to actually do the work that relates to my business. And I think there's two things about that kind of made the difference for me. One is, yes, that security piece of knowing that I don't necessarily need to meet certain checkpoints or meet certain revenue goals to keep this going. I can go at my own pace and grow organically at a pace that I think is sensible for the business itself. But also, at the end of the day, it goes back to that agency, meaning I'm in control. I get to decide what is best, and I get to decide which paths to take. I don't need to, you know, convince a board or convince other people that this path is sensible. If I think it's the right thing to do, I do it. So that also, again, relates to the control aspect, but it's also related to the notion that, yes, I'm a solo entrepreneur in this.
That's a really good point. I think about not I didn't quite have, again, the passive income set up, but I was great at my job, but I wanted to. I acknowledge I'm almost living the cliche. I wanted to coach my kids' sports teams, and so this spring, between my son's baseball team, I'm helping out a practice. My middle daughter's team, I'm helping out a practice, and my older daughter, I'm actually coaching her team. I'm at the softball and baseball field 5 days a week. And so I have to be done by 3 p.m. Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. And sometimes it means that, yeah, I'll go back to work after I put kids to bed, but I get to choose that. And it was kind of similar to what you phrased a few years ago. I was prioritizing my time over my salary. And that felt like it gave me the control of my own life.
Right. That's a very good point. And it sounds like you're living the dream, Aaron.
That's hard to say. I mean, it's also like COVID had a lot to do with that. The two kids are still in hybrid school sometimes and distance learning other times. And so there are enough interruptions throughout the day, trying to keep track of all the things that I've signed up for, and getting to all the practices, and kind of making sure I block out time to get the planning work done for my client meetings the following day. Like, there's still enough stresses there that it doesn't, I guess it doesn't feel like I'm living the dream per se. Like that doesn't quite feel right. It could just be I need a vacation that I haven't taken in a year. But it's the idea that, like, I've brought all of this on myself. All of these are things I've signed up for and participated and volunteered and chosen to do, that I don't feel any animosity or ill will towards anyone. It's like, yeah, I'm stressed. Sometimes I am trying to do a lot of different things, but these are all the things I signed up to do. And again, like, it's almost like, so it's not even easier living the dream, but it's definitely kind of, I feel the control. Like, I signed up for the PTA starting next school year. And so tonight, on my 1 weeknight that doesn't have baseball or softball practice, I now added a PTA meeting. But I signed up for it. So it's easier for me to kind of deal with mentally.
I think it might also be reassuring to know that even though things are busy, after all, starting a business isn't supposed to be easy by any means.
That's true.
But there is a difference, right? The notion with a business is, you're in control, and over time, it is supposed to be that, the less hours you put in, the more you get out of it.
I was several years ago, I was talking to a friend who's started a few businesses, and I was texting with him. I was headed to a family function, so it had to be some kind of holiday or special weekend. And he said he was working on something. And I was like, what are you doing working this time of night? And you should be spending time with friends and family, something like that. Fast forward a couple years, and I found myself kind of like what you were saying of, I have nothing on my calendar right now. You know what? I'll go respond to a few client emails instead of letting that wait till tomorrow. It's like, but it's like, or I'll go read this research on investing strategies or taxes. And like, I found myself sitting on the couch at night, and there's a new review of tax law coming out on kisses.com by I think it's Jeff Levine, if I get that correct. And it's like, does spending my evenings reading about the most recent stimulus package or most recent tax law change, it's kind of blurring the lines between work and life. And I feel that a lot, that the distinction between work and not work is not as clear cut. And I'm curious, what, one, like, do you feel that? But two, how does it relate to kind of your feeling of control?
I do feel that is a good point. Don't really switch off. Like, when you go to the office, you're in office mode, and then when you drive home from the day, you do your wind down, and then you can kind of shut things off for the evening. I get the fact that being physically at home the whole time changes that calculus a little bit, that mindset. But I think if that can be called a downside, then the benefits far outweigh. At the end of the day, I feel much better, A, not having to commute, and B, realizing that, yeah, if I have some downtime during lunch, sure, spend a couple hours and, let's get groceries and let's take a walk in the park and, let's work on this side project in the backyard. And then, yeah, I'll go back to work and I might work a little later into the evening, NBD. So I think having that flexibility and sense of control far outweighs the mindset of having a barrier between home and work.
Yeah, so yeah, like the physical barrier does make a difference, and a lot of that is going to be COVID related, and that also could be impacting the conversation with clients of, well, they can't go travel anyways, so if they're going to be home, might as well work from home. So maybe the conversations change a year from now in 2022, but it's not everyone can kind of feel like they can take on the risks to be that entrepreneur. But again, that's when it comes to like what stock technically is that partial ownership in a business. And so when the company does well and the owners benefit, that's there's a tiny little bit of entrepreneurial perspective to going to work at a tech company that is private, that, well, you do get a salary, the equity may never pay off, but like there's some like fractional entrepreneurial component to that. You could have gone to work at a different company that had different benefits or different salary, but maybe not the same equity upside. And those are just different decisions you could make. But
yeah,
it's that you and I get that sense of control from our entrepreneurial decisions. Although you had the passive income set up, but so like it's possible for others to get that same level of control. But it's also maybe if they try to start their own business, they feel like they lost that control. That they don't feel the sense of control of their life and time by starting a business. They feel a sense of control from some of the structure that employment can provide. Maybe like they like being able to kind of clock out and not think about work. Because for me, at a younger age, that was definitely the case. That I could check my calendar for the next day, kind of as I was getting ready to leave, make my notes of what I'm going to work on, and then not think about it into the evening. But I definitely had to be there the next morning. And so even though I appreciated the structure, I guess I'd say I felt secure, in part because I knew the business was doing well and I knew the value I provided the business. So I had some feeling of that. I think that might be the difference between security and control. I felt secure, but I didn't quite feel the same level of control. I still feel like I had to ask permission for things. And that's kind of like, that's why you get to the classic, the money that represents financial independence is called FU money. That's just kind of like the easiest way to phrase it and sum it up. But it is, you get to make all the decisions for your life and you don't need to ask permission of someone else.
Right. Yeah. It's the notion that you own your home, it's paid off, you're no other major debt, you own your cars, you have enough saved for retirement, you're indemnified against, the major things that can kind of slow you down.
You got all the insurances in place. Yep.
yeah, the insurances are in place, the kids are taken care of if that's applicable. And yeah, it again provides that agency, that security. And another way to kind of think about that is if you're on that path, there's another fire flavor that might fit into this dynamic. So you might be able to guess what this one's about, but it's called barista fire.
Okay, I'm ready. Go ahead.
So the notion here is you're pretty much at financial independence, but you want to keep working. So choose an easy job that you enjoy that maybe provides some sort of supplemental income, such as being a barista. And yeah, the notion here is it's a job that's more like a supplement. And yeah, you're doing it under somebody else's control. You need to get permission to, maybe take extended time off and things like that. But you don't really, need that job in air quotes. Although it does help. So that's kind of the distinction.
You kind of need any random kind of low stress, I won't say minimum wage, but could be any random low stress minimum wage job. So you happen to pick a barista, but it could be like if you happen to you ask for time off, you don't get it, you decide, you know what, I'm gonna leave this job, take my time off, and then I'll go find another random minimum wage job.
Yeah, you go to the Starbucks across the street. You're kind of okay.
I'm almost here, like, I'm imagining
like,
someone like going from Starbucks, I'm going to take a month vacation, and then they go to work at Pete's, they take a month vacation, they work at Phil's Coffee, take a month vacation, go back to Starbucks, a different Starbucks location.
Right. And the notion is a pretty big difference. Like, let's say you need 60,000 a year to be comfortable, and 3% rule, $1 million would get you half of that. So now you need to, fill the other half and so on. So if you can get 30,000 by just hopping around from, coffee shop to coffee shop every couple months, then that might kind of do
it. This actually reminds me of a few clients who I've gone through the Kinder's 3 questions exercise with them about life planning and kind of, if you didn't want to worry about money, how would you spend your time? I know one has expressed interest in being a baker and would like to kind of dreams about building a career out of that hobby, but doesn't like, no, can they afford a kitchen, like an industrial kitchen? Like they haven't done any of the business planning side of it. She likes baking, so she wants to bake more. Another comment on being a librarian. Like he liked the idea of a short commute, going to a work location, more on the quiet side, being able to help people and kind of reading books, and that was one of the ideas that appealed to him. But it doesn't have to be librarian specifically, but just that, yeah, you've made a kind of a time commitment. It's like I'll commit to working 20 hours a week, and get to turn my brain off when I leave work and don't have to worry about it or stress. But I like the idea of spending my time somehow. Others have mentioned the idea of volunteering. There's usually some organization that they feel more passionate about, and instead of donating dollars, they might donate their time. But I think that might all classify, not quite the barista fire per se, but that idea of going back to what you said. It's the work and the value they derive for work is kind of independent from the money they earn. And barista fire is like halfway. There's like a hybrid of that, but I think that's probably the best way to phrase it. yeah, a lot of this just comes down to you get to choose how you spend your time. It's okay to choose to work, but you don't have to work for money. I think is that how you was that the phrase? Did I get that right?
Yeah, yeah. It's the for money part that becomes optional.
So, any other kind of observations or anecdotes that you can think of? Any other flavors of fire that you've read about? But when you think about this, just idea of separating the feelings you get from being financially independent from the value you get from work. While you could stop working, you don't need to. But also on the flip side, to get some of that sense of control, you don't necessarily need to be financially independent. So it's like you may need to keep working, but sometimes like, and I've seen that the from a financial planning perspective, if I show a client you're not financially independent now, but you're financially independent in 5 years or 10 years, like just that idea of having an idea of how they're on track, and like you said, knowing I'm on track provides some of those levels of feelings as well. It's like I thought I was going to work much longer. I didn't realize I was closer than I thought. And so now that I feel I'm on track, I genuinely feel happier and less stress in my life. That those unknown unknowns are kind of gone, and now it's much closer to a known unknown, or even a known known. Is that a thing? A
Yeah,
known known, or is that just a
it is
known?
a no.
Okay.
Or let's say it is. Let's see, an unknown known. That's something that's known, but you don't know it, or I don't know.
That actually sounds
Or,
like I think an unknown known would be like an ignorance is bliss kind of scenario, or like a head in the
there
sand.
you go. Well, okay, so that is a very good point then. Meaning it definitely shows there is good value in having these types of conversations and going through the financial planning process and understanding, what is your comfort zone in terms of all of these, flavors of fire or financial independence or retire early, meaning, what does it mean for the individual? And also, what does it mean in terms of where that individual is in terms of obtaining where they want to be? And not having that information, I think is a unknown known at that point, right? It's something that if it was a known, it would increase your control, it could
Mm-hmm.
increase your agency, increase your sense of security, decrease your fear, and these benefits seem like a tangible win.
I agree with that. I think that's so. Again, this might be more anecdotal, but I might have actually do have a larger sample size across all the clients I've helped over at my current firm and my prior firm. That idea that the happiness and well-being, the sense of control, and all those like intangible benefits from working with a financial planner or financial advisor, they don't come when the financial independence is achieved. They come from the planning process. And that changing those sense of insecurity and I hope I can retire someday into, yes, I know when I can retire and what steps I need to do to reach that. And so maybe that's the kind of some of the things I'm seeing is that yeah, maybe I'm almost giving myself too credit. Like the clients who, like I guess all my clients do kind of mention that sense of agency, or that sense of control, that they appreciate those intangible benefits. Some of them is because they're financially independent. Others is because they know they're on track. They know the steps they need to take now. They get to maintain their lifestyle and they're happy with their lifestyle now, but we've removed those future uncertainties.
Right. Yeah. Some good stuff, Aaron.
So yeah, I'm almost like, is it just being a financial advisor? All of the anecdotes are those who are with clients who, by definition, have chosen to work with a financial advisor. So it almost like we almost need, if we want to get like really good data to exploit this, we need to talk to people who are financially independent, but still financially independent, still working, but not working with an advisor. And like we need to add that working with an advisor variable. So it's financially independent, still working, not working with an advisor. Maybe not financially independent, still working, not with an advisor. And like, is it the working with an advisor that provides us sense of well-being, or that sense of control? Or is it among the general population of those choosing not to work with an advisor, does it need to be financially independent? For those who are financially independent but not working with an advisor, they feel that same level of control.
I think that's a good, PhD paper topic for some student at a university. What I'd also have to say is, something I have seen, whether an individual is working with a financial advisor or not, it's likely a shame if someone, could be financially independent and they just don't know it.
Oh yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's a good point. I actually I have seen that.
Yeah. And yeah, the notion is, here is somebody who they could have all of these benefits that we're talking about, but like we said, it's a unknown known.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, this is a good conversation today. I'm glad we went down this path. I did not expect to end up where we did. I do have to say that.
Thanks, Aaron, and thanks everybody for listening. If you're enjoying these episodes, do subscribe to our podcast. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
We appreciate you joining us today for this episode of the Mind Money Spectrum podcast. Be sure to visit mindmoneyspectrum.com to access the entire library of episodes. Remember, it's not black and white, but the wide spectrum of gray area where you get to pursue the freedoms you want in life. Opinions voiced in this material are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. All performance referenced is historical and is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested in directly. Have a nice day.